Hello everyone and welcome to the Fanalysis show by Fanalytics. Today we were doing something a bit different. Today we're going to be talking about our Premier League predictions. This will cover the league position, who will get Champions League, who will get their famous Europa League place, who will get relegation spots, and we'll go through Player of the Year, Young Player of the Year, and all these kind of player accolades. So Matt, let's start off. Who do you think will win next season?
For me, I can't see past Man City right at this point, at this moment in time. I mean, look, Liverpool are still going to be close, and I do think teams like Spurs and Arsenal are closing the gap.
Yep.
But you know, Liverpool and Man City have been doing this year after year. They're just like they're so well run. These clubs that they make new signings and they don't skip a beat. These players just come into the team,
Yep.
and there's no waiting around for a few months for everything to gel. You know,
What gives you the edge for City over Liverpool?
Haaland for me. I just think Haaland and Nunes, they're two massive signings. Both gone for that imposing sort of number nine figure up front.
Yeah, very interesting.
Um, and Nunes has started pretty well. It hit the ground running in the Community Shield, which is good with strikers. The longer they go waiting for that first goal, the pressure does start to sort of rise for them. But
Yep.
I think when's all said and done, Haaland is going to score a bucket load of goals. I'm not too concerned about his performance in the Community Shield.
Yeah, I mean, he could have had a hat trick another day. Piece of luck.
Yeah, yeah. He just we haven't seen a period in his career where he hasn't scored goals. It's a young career so far, and it's a big step up. Um, from Bundesliga to Premier League, but he seems like he can make it. He never had problems scoring against the better teams at Dortmund, for example.
Yep, true. And his Champions League record is phenomenal as well. So
Yeah,
I don't. Yeah, I agree with you in the case that I don't think he's going to skip a beat. He's going to go in. He's going to score goals. My only concern with him is probably minutes. How many minutes
yeah,
he's going to pitch? They have a lot of options as well. Maybe Pep will do some false nine positions at some points of the season. Maybe he wants to manage the minutes for injury sake.
maybe. I mean, Alvarez scored his first goal for City in the Community Shield, didn't he? So that's not a bad option as a second striker.
Yeah, very true. For me, I would say Liverpool this year. More so from the psychology aspect. I think City have won it two times in the year, but I think they are aiming for the Champions League. The signing of Haaland, I think
Yeah,
it's a Champions League signing. It's for the transition, the counter attacks. Kind of just helps them in that aspect. So I
yeah,
think they'll always have that eye for that. And I also think what will help for Liverpool is the World Cup. Salah is not playing with Egypt in the World Cup, so I think he's going to be fresh. He's going to have that 1 month break. Where last season he went to AFCON and he kind of tailwind
yeah. That
performed
did he did sort of
flat
slow
out.
down in the second half of the season. Still done all right. It's not his raw numbers were still pretty good,
Yeah,
despite all the criticism sort of leveled his way. But yeah, yeah. It is a toss up between those two. It was last season. Even heading into April, we spoke about predictions and who we thought was gonna come through at the end last season.
yeah,
It was a toss up then, and right now heading into the new season, Liverpool have the edge in the Community Shields. I, I I'm not going to read too much into that.
no, you can't.
Man City never really seemed to win the Community Shield. They never really seemed to take it seriously. Arsenal have a couple of victories against them in the Community Shield, so yeah, it is going to be a toss up. We'll learn a lot more about those teams in the early part of the season, but I don't see any other team breaking the domination of those two at the moment.
In your prediction, is it close, or do you think City will be a little bit more margin this time?
Then Liverpool, nah, it's going to be close. The, there's not much has separated these teams
No.
over the past 5 years. I don't think it's suddenly going to change now. And the fact they both signed that striker at the same time, I don't know what it is with these two teams, but they just seem so perfectly linked. slightly different styles of play, but equally dominant.
Yeah,
It was a pretty
they're leading
special
the pack.
period.
They're leading the
Yeah,
pack.
yeah,
They're the ones setting the foot of what tactics to play, what kind of player roles are coming into play. Like
yeah,
we're just all catching up, really.
yeah. So I guess the big question, and I think much more interesting conversation,
hmm
is who's going to get the other two Champions League places.
For me, for I think third will be like a bit of an island, like we thought with Chelsea last season. I think this season it'll be Spurs,
Okay.
purely for the Conte factor. I think he's a born winner. Everywhere he does, he's going to succeed or nearly wins a title. But in this case, Liverpool C are just, I think, just out of reach. I
Yeah,
think,
I agree with you. I've got Tottenham third as well. I don't think it's going to be Spurs on an island,
okay,
but I do fancy them for third. I looked at some of the signings they've made. It's not just the guys that are going to step into the first team. We think like Basuma
yep,
should step into the first team. They've added so much depth to that squad. At the back end of last season, Conte had great success where he basically found his starting 11,
yep,
and it was like these guys are going to start week after week. You can't do that this season. Not if they want to be competitive in the Champions League. Not if they want to go long in the Premier League, which I don't think they'll have the legs to really go with Liverpool and City.
yep, agreed.
But I think they're gonna like get a decent points haul, this season.
Yeah, I think this is like Spurs fans should be looking forward to this. This is Conte's
Hmm.
first pre-season as well, which is always a huge factor for Conte because he likes his team fit. And you can see in the pictures they are looking razor sharp. I don't know if you've seen them. Like Kane's looking like
Yeah, I mean, I they posted some of the videos from the training session, one of those brutal training sessions of his.
yeah,
So not so enjoyable for the players in pre-season, but I remember New England Patriots in the NFL. Bill Belichick had a very similar idea. The team would run, and run in pre-season at a hill, a slope
all right.
built into their training facility that they would basically just do laps up and down, up and down, up and down
I feel tired already.
in pre-season. But the thinking behind it is you have that in the bank, and later in the season they think that gives them an edge. And late in games where other teams start to tire,
hmm
Tottenham might have that little bit extra. And I do believe that, and I think that's going to be a big factor for Spurs this season.
Yeah, I think a lot of games last season, from what I remember, Spurs, if the front three weren't firing like Son, Kane, or Kulusevski, they started to struggle a bit. They
Yeah,
didn't press intently enough. I don't think that'd be the case this season. Conte is just going to be on them from the set to the
they
finish.
felt like a team that was either going forward or having to get back and defend.
Yep.
They didn't really seem to be able to control games. And outside of Liverpool, Man City, the reason I think that those two are so dominant and that no other team's really on that level, not consistently, is the midfield. None of these other good teams, rest of the top six teams, they're all looking for that same sort of midfield control.
Yep.
And I think Spurs, by getting Basuma, is a big signing for them, because Brighton were able to dominate possession in games
True.
themselves last year, and Basuma was a big reason for that. So I think he's going to be a key signing for Spurs in that regard. I think they're going to be able to control games a bit better.
Yep, I agree, and I also think Perisic, a winger, wing back, you know, their wing backs last season was Doherty and Reguilon, I guess for the most part. Sometimes Sessegnon
Yeah,
came
it's
in.
Sessegnon by the end of the season,
Yeah,
hence why Reguilon's probably on his way out the door at Spurs.
yeah, Perisic is a
Um,
huge upgrade. Like
yeah,
that's just
Perisic. Sessegnon's still a decent option for me if he's. I think he's staying. I don't see anything about him on his way. Yeah, Doherty on the right hand side. They signed Jed Spence as well, highly rated from Forest.
yep.
He should get some minutes. whether he's ready for, sort of Champions League, I'm not so sure about
Nah,
that
I
sort of
don't think
thing.
so either.
Maybe that's the one sort of weak spot in this team in terms of the talent they've got elsewhere on the pitch. Maybe that's one position that's slightly weak. The Doherty is a good player, but
I think
I haven't seen it.
he's a great wing back. To be fair, when he ever
Yeah,
played as a back five for Wolves or Spurs, he had that period just before his injury. He was doing really
yeah.
well.
Oh yeah, he was on fire. Um, and then for me, the other team I've got breaking into the top four is Arsenal.
Oh, Kelso Breeze.
Yeah, it's very exciting time to be an Arsenal fan. It feels like there's a lot of optimism around the club this pre-season. I think they've made some good signings. Zinchenko, Gabriel Jesus, in particular, are ones that I really have been impressed by. We just seem to have a bit more depth, similar to Spurs, where I think at the back end of last season they had that starting 11.
Yep,
Arteta had that for much of last season, and it was only really towards the end of the season where we started to get niggly injuries and losing players for a few games at a time. That's when the wheels sort of started to come off.
yep, true.
So addressing that depth should help Arsenal in that regard.
Yeah,
Gabriel Jesus fills a hole that they needed at number 9. He's been on fire in pre-season. Can't stop scoring.
very scary.
It is. It is. He's never been that sort of prolific one, that prolific striker at City. He had like these spurts of form.
Yep,
He always like had these 4 or 5 games where he just, even last season, he just explode for a few games and then just sort of go quiet for a bit. And I don't know whether it was just Pep's natural sort of rotation of the side, whether that always sort of hindered Gabriel Jesus when he really got into form.
yeah, it
It
takes you
always
out of the
felt like he was
momentum.
being yanked out of the team. Yeah. But I feel good about Arsenal, and we speak about that control in the midfield. It was something that when Thomas Partey was on the pitch, when they had that midfield three of Partey, Odegaard, and Xhaka,
Yep,
they were able to control games most of the time. And I think the game for Arsenal fans and for Arsenal fan like myself that gave me a great deal of confidence was the game at home to Manchester City on New Year's Day,
I remember that. Yeah,
where we, for an hour of that game, we played them off the park. We were absolutely brilliant. We dominated the midfield battle. Partey was amazing that day. And I think, those sort of performances, they've got a bit more depth now. There are players, and Partey is one of them, that if they lost him for significant time, it's a problem.
is that
But
the case this season, or is he gone off to charge? Do you know?
uh, I, I don't know what's going on, but he's been playing throughout preseason. He's travelled everywhere, so I don't see there being any problems in that regard in the short term, anyway. But yeah, I'm very excited about Arsenal this season.
Yep. I begrudgingly put Arsenal as well for the fourth place. I think what Arteta's done stage by stage is he's built a really solid team, and now it's just every year the signings have been they're the right profile signings.
Yeah,
They're
I
not like the
think
Manchester United signings where it's just let's throw money at like a star player. These are like
yeah
players that fit the bill of Arteta's system, which is kind of like a City system slightly.
yeah I think people have mistakenly, last summer people mistakenly took a short-term view of what Arsenal were doing. They looked at the signings in isolation, Ramsdale, Ben White. They just saw them as overpays, of English players
Yep.
that weren't really going to improve Arsenal in the immediate short term. They actually did improve Arsenal in the immediate short term, but they were also long term signings, and they were part of that long term strategy that you just mentioned there. After we made the Willian signing, there was a couple of missteps around that time.
Yep.
Since then, the transfer business has been very, very consistent by Arsenal, and yeah, you have slowly started to see it being built.
Yeah. Because when you look at the Arsenal season last, and you think of all the gaps that the Arsenal team need, it was a striker. You got
Yeah,
Jesus. It was that kind of fill-in for Tierney and for Xhaka. You got Zinchenko.
Yeah.
You also got Fabio Vieira, who's going to come, can also provide competition for Saka and can play in Odegaard's position. So
Yeah.
you got Saliba come back, which every Arsenal.
Saliba's like a new sign. I'm very excited about him. Um, yeah, I mean, it just and we still might do a little bit more business. There's a few tier ones at Leicester and Arsenal that feel that Arsenal are moving for Tielemans later in this window.
I wouldn't be surprised.
So
Yeah,
I'd love that. He's a great player. But so we all right. So we both see Spurs and Arsenal in that top four. I guess the teams we need to talk about are the ones that we think are going to miss out on the top four.
yep.
Specifically, the two top six sides,
Hmm.
Manchester United and Chelsea.
So
I was
I'll go for it.
sorry,
Yeah.
go on. No, I was going to say I was going to start with Chelsea.
Yeah.
It, you know, they're a weird side at the moment. I can't quite work out, you know, what their plan is in terms of transfer business, and it all feels a little bit muddled at Chelsea at the moment. And to be honest, the only thing that really gives me confidence about them as a side and a team that I think still can finish in the top four quite easily next season. It's not going to take miracles for that to happen.
Yep.
It's Thomas Tuchel. I think he's a great manager, and Sterling's going to score goals in that team. I'm sure of that. Koulibaly is about as like for like for Rudiger as you can get. Big, athletic defender. But, the way they finished last season was concerning.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I think without the Tuchel factor, I wouldn't be.
Mm,
I'll probably even put them lower, maybe, because I think
yeah.
their squad is kind of it's built for a or Tuchel's kind of bringing the best out of them. But I think if another manager came in, I don't think they would be as defensively sound or kind of using the wing backs as effectively. He's used the squad perfectly.
Yeah, that's the thing. It is very common with this sort of 5-2-3 or 3-4-3, whatever you sort of want to call it.
Yeah.
Um, you know, Tottenham had it under Conte last season as well. The midfield's a little less. It's less important to a degree because you have that defensive protection.
Yeah.
You have that additional centre back, and the wing backs can also push on and become sort of attackers as well. So that controlling that midfield battle isn't as important, and it's helped Chelsea because I think the centre of midfield is their weakest area, and it was last season. I think it was something that let them down towards the end of the season because at the start of the season they were a very good side defensively, and they scored a lot of goals at the start of last season as well. They didn't necessarily come from the people that were signed to score the goals,
Yeah.
but they were getting goals. And
Yeah.
I'm surprised they haven't really addressed that area.
Yeah, maybe he thought of Lukaku, the signing previous season, and maybe he thought that was the wrong signing. Maybe
Hmm.
they don't suit like a proper striker. I know spoke about City and Liverpool doing that, but
Yeah.
maybe at the stage that Tuchel wants to go to a 4-3-3. I think that's what his preferred formation was at Dortmund, if I'm correct. He kind of just uses for Chelsea
He
because
is he is flexible. I
yeah,
know that. I know that. But yeah, and I agree. I don't think they're in a position right now to play a 4-3-3. I
yeah.
think it is going to take a couple of big midfield signings.
I agree with you on the centre mids. Conte is like playing less minutes every season, it seems, no matter how
Yeah, and
good he is, and then Jorginho seems to wane a bit. I think I don't know if he's the unless he's the
Jorginho is a very one-dimensional player.
yeah he's a sorry player really.
Yeah, and as good as Jorginho is on the ball, and he is very good on the ball, you look at Fabinho and Rodri for Liverpool and Manchester City. They are excellent passers of the ball as
Yep.
well. In the sense that Jorginho might be slightly better in that regard, not by much. Rodri is one of the better passers in the whole Premier League. Never mind in that position, but they're also big, imposing figures, and they have a defensive presence about them, something which Jorginho lacks to a degree, I think.
Yep, true. If you're running through that midfield, you put target Jorginho's side. He isn't
Yeah,
gonna.
and it feels like, Jorginho and Kante almost have to play alongside each other.
Yep.
Kante's never worked in that holding role on his own.
No.
He's never been able to play that. And Jorginho needs a ball winner next to him. So it does sort of limit what Chelsea could do. I've always liked Kovacic as a player,
Yep,
but
exactly. But he doesn't link with either Jorginho or Kante. He's a,
no, it's yeah. I do think it's Chelsea's weakest position, and I'm surprised that they haven't really targeted it. I thought Declan Rice was nailed on to go to Chelsea. I don't know whether they went cold on him or the new ownership. Maybe it's just they don't have that sort of money
yeah,
in this window. I think that's more likely to be a reason.
yeah. The
But
back five is looking good though. If they get Cucurella as well, that's
yeah,
the latest
yeah,
rumor.
he's been linked with everyone. Um, but I see Chelsea sort of around fifth and as strong contenders for top four still. As long as they've got Tuchel, I think they're going to be there or thereabouts. Um, Manchester United,
Oh no.
you feel primed to talk about this more than me.
Of course, it's a hard topic to to say. Obviously, like first off the bat, I want to say out of all the managers we've had, I have the most faith in Ten Hag. Like
Hmm.
I watched a little bit more of Ajax at the end of last season, and in terms of all these top managers coming, they have a system, they have roles for players, and he's got that in the bag. And he's not that rigid, but he's also flexible enough.
Yeah.
Whether he can then deal with the star players, I'm not that concerned anymore. I know we always come managers. Can they deal with star players? I rather them. Ten Hag comes in and he's 11 of his own players.
Hmm.
So that's what I'm kind of hoping. So we are in the transition period. I expect us to probably score more goals and probably exceed a bit more. Just as the team gets kind of used to it and we don't have the players to play in the system. Um, my kind of hopes are, with Jadon Sancho, Harry Maguire, sort of, get some confidence from Ten
Hmm.
Hag to sort of play the system they want. I think Martinez will be a good signing. I think Malacia, from the games I've seen in pre-season, I think he looks a real talent. I'm surprised that we're actually doing signings like that where they come out of nowhere.
I mean, that's a great signing. Any time a top six, any Premier League team signs a player for 13 million on decent wages, it's low risk, it's high reward,
Yeah,
and it's always a great sign. And then if it doesn't work out and you lose him on a free, what's that? 13 million is nothing to a side like
Man United. Yeah,
club like Manchester United. Um, yeah, I like that signing. I like. I look at this sort of project that United have got in front of them. You know, you're deluded if you think that one summer of signings and suddenly, okay, United are, going to be a great side again. I think there's going to be progress this year, but I think there's going to be like big sort of hiccups as well because it feels exactly like the Arsenal job that Arteta walked into 2.5 years ago.
yeah, I agree with that.
And I see a very similar manager in Ten Hag, a guy that has a clear vision in what he wants his side to, be tactically, but
Yep.
also from a character standpoint, something which Arsenal really keyed into in their signings they've made over the past couple of years. I think it's going to be the same at Manchester United. I don't think it's a surprise that Arsenal and Manchester United both had targeted the same player in that sense.
Yep. True.
You know, I don't doubt that he's probably got a great character and it's going to be a good signing for United.
Well, they do call him the Bulldog, so
Yeah, and his versatility as well. That's going to be useful. You know, if you play in the high line, having a centre back who's 5'8", 5'9",
5 and 9, I think.
5'9", isn't too bad. Because a centre back in the high lines, it's more interceptions, it's more athleticism that you
Yep.
look for. Um, And even set pieces, that might be a slight concern, but you're always going to have shorter players defending set pieces. As long as you've got other tall players in the squad, that shouldn't in itself be a problem.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think last season it was like lofted crosses or high crosses weren't really a problem for us. We had McTominay and Maguire. They
No.
seemed to deal with it. It was just low crosses, really. The cutbacks, the kind of into the box that we really had a problem with. Like
Yeah.
Maguire doesn't have the turning circle to deal with those kind of stuff.
Yeah, he's not the most mobile in those situations. But the one thing that you haven't really addressed is that defensive midfield position. I know Martinez can play in that position, and I would be surprised if he didn't play there quite a lot this season because I've seen clips of him at Ajax in that role,
Yeah,
and he's looked very very adept.
I think the opposite. I think he'll play left centre back,
Yeah. Oh
predominantly.
yeah, yeah. He's been brought in to predominantly play centre back, um, and I think that's why United have really gone aggressively at De Jong
Yeah, maybe
at this
too aggressive.
point. Yeah, because United, in terms of the deal with Barcelona, anyway, I think United hold all the cards.
Yeah,
If I'm United, I'd turn up on deadline day. I'd say, look, 50 million,
take it or
take it
leave
or
it.
leave it.
Get in
You
trouble.
know, because I think De Jong might just relent at that point. Because I don't think he's going to want to be a backup centre back in heading into a World Cup year.
Yeah, that's
So
true. I do feel like De Jong wants. I know the kind of reports say that he doesn't want to come to United and he wants to stay at Barcelona, but I also think that might be just a play. If he says he wants to go to Man United, then will he get his wages, which is quite a lot to be fair, 15 million.
yeah,
Anyone wants to get
it's
those
it's it's
wages.
a very complicated scenario, and yeah, I don't think it's a case of De Jong doesn't want to play for Manchester United. I think it's more of a De Jong and Barcelona situation
Yeah,
in that one. But yeah, I think I, I s- I think United are going to be very inconsistent this season,
yeah,
but not so much in the sense they were last season under Solskjaer and Rangnick, where it all felt quite depressing and dull. I think it's going to be a bit more exciting. There's going to be a bit more optimism.
yeah. I think we'll play a better attacking football, a better brand of football. I also
Yeah.
think like the two major points for Man United last season was building out from the back against high press teams, and also off ball movement. And I think
Hmm.
both those things with the signings we've had with Malacia and Martinez, it solves the first part of the problem. Now off ball move I've seen in pre-season, I've seen a lot more off ball movement, like a lot more pressing and a lot more
The off
runs
the
in
off ball
behind.
movement just feels like a mentality thing.
Must be.
It because it's the same group of players, and anyone with a pair of eyes can can see the difference in the way they've played in pre-season as well.
Yep.
We're not even talking about proper football kicking off yet, and we're talking about a different level of intensity. So it definitely is a mentality thing, and you know, I think we're going to hear more of these bizarre sort of his disciplinarian sort of reports.
Yeah.
Don't pay too much attention to that. There's he's asking players to buy in, and there might be some surprises in terms of players that just get cast out into the wilderness,
Yeah.
where they, if they're not on boards, and if Ronaldo's not completely on boards, he's not going to be in the starting 11.
Yeah.
You
He
know,
got hooked at a half time last preseason match.
yeah, yeah. Ten Hag's not just going to play him for the sake of playing him, um, which is going to be for the best for United.
But yeah, I would say the one thing different to my prediction is I put Man United in fifth place. I think they might pip Chelsea. Obviously, whatever happens, the transfer window will make a major part
Yeah.
of that. But I think, for me, I think because Tuchel wanted those key signings, I don't think he's got all the players he wants. I think he wants to move. He wants to transition to a better team.
Mm.
I Unless he doesn't get it, I can see like a little bit of fallout, and I can see
It feels like a club in transition. Never mind a side. It feels like a club in transition, and I think that's going to have an impact on the pitch. It certainly did at the back end of last season.
yeah,
So yeah, I don't hate that prediction. I don't hate. I do think United will be a little bit off the top four, yeah, in terms of points. But yeah, In terms of relegation, then, what are you thinking?
So for me, for dead last, and I'm pretty sure that they'll go down. It's probably Bournemouth.
Yeah, I've got Bournemouth as well, finishing bottom.
I can't see a way out. They haven't really made any
No,
inspiring signings. How are they going to
yeah,
transition to the Premier League? They'll just go straight back down.
Scott Parker is Bournemouth manager, right?
Yep.
And if he came up with Fulham 2 years ago, they played some easy football on the eye, but it didn't really strike fear into anyone. They were very very beatable, and I see the same with Bournemouth. And to be honest, I still see the same with Fulham. I don't really see a side that feels any different to the one that keeps coming up and keeps going back down. Them and Norwich, they just feel interchangeable at this point.
We need like a division between those two, like a
They
mini.
should just be in a never-ending playoff the rest of eternity.
But yeah,
Yeah, because I've got Fulham in 19th. As I don't know about you.
I got Fulham 18th. My next 19th was Everton. I
Mm.
think it's going to happen. I think they were very lucky last season. I predicted them to go down last season after we did a little run-in update. Very surprised they did some shock results. Some results against like Man United. I think they beat us, and I think
Oh, you get that. You
yeah,
get when teams are fighting for their lives at the end of the season. You get some great results come in. But I do agree. I agree with you in the sense that I don't see much at Everton. I'm not. I don't feel good about them in any way whatsoever. I think Lampard's going to be the first manager to be sacked in the Premier League this season.
yep, I
I
agree
don't
with
think
that.
it will take very very long either. Their signings, they seem to largely have targeted Burnley players who went down last season. Tarkowski, I quite like. He's a decent defender,
Yeah,
but
I like McNeil as well, but
I do like McNeil. I don't. He doesn't feel dynamic. He doesn't feel like one of these dynamic attacking players. He feels like a an old fashioned winger who just will whip crosses in all day. And I
yep,
think that sort of player isn't really suited to playing like left wing.
he should be a
You
wing
know,
back.
either a wing back or like, a wide centre mid. Sort of De Bruyne who operates in that half space.
Yep, I can see that.
But yeah, it certainly doesn't strike me as a sign in that. Oh yeah, this Everton team's serious.
Yeah, and they've lost Richarlison, so if
Yeah, the best
they're gonna
player's
hang
gone.
all their boots onto Callum Lewis, really.
Yeah, Calvert-Lewin and Damari Gray flashed last season.
So
Anthony Gordon flashed
yeah,
towards the end of the season, but let's not forget all of their signings at the moment seem to be these players. That
championship.
are either championship or players that were good in the Premier League, but or just haven't quite hit the heights they were expected to. Dele Alli is nowhere near the player he was at Spurs under Pochettino.
Yeah,
Damari Gray, promised a lot at Leicester, but never made it. It it just feels yeah, it
yeah,
just feels very dull at Everton. They
and
were very lucky last season. You're right,
with
but
Lampard, I can't see a play style. I can't see anything that will at least like gel a team together either. So I think
yeah,
it
I
must
mean,
be
if
the
it's
season.
from what I've seen of Lampard, his teams will score goals, but they leak a hell of a lot of goals. Um, and for a team that doesn't have much, top end talent in attacking areas, that's a real problem.
Yeah,
I will say that I see Everton finishing like 15th to 17th, somewhere in that region. I don't think they'll go down. For me, it's going to be the three promoted teams. I, haven't- Forest have been noisy
yeah.
in in the summer transfer window. I'm not too sure on a lot of these signings. They feel like very expensive sort of chances that they're taking.
I can see that.
But it's been 20 years since they've been in the top flight. You know, rather than doing this sort of Fulham and Norwich where you sort of just
See you next
almost
season.
accept that you're going back down. Let's just make a real crack at this. Steve Cooper's a very good manager. He's done a great job at Forest. So they might spring one or two surprises in terms of results. I can certainly see them surprising a few. I mean, they surprised Arsenal in the FA Cup last season.
I think
Um,
um, I think Forest will do quite well this season. I think they will be last season's Brentford, season before that Sheffield. I think
okay.
I think promoted teams that come with a counter-attacking, maybe back three, back five formation, seem to do pretty well. And like you said, in the FA Cup run, they did beat or they did compete even against Liverpool.
I will say that about Steve Cooper. He does seem very tactically adept. They play some nice football in Championship Forest, but they were flexible.
Yeah.
They could do a lot of different things, especially in that FA Cup. Some of those FA Cup performances. Um, yeah, but I just do I see them consistently, picking up the points they need. I'm not so sure yet.
For me, I
Oh,
think I think they'll be maybe, I don't know, let's say maybe they can reach up maybe 13th. I would say 13th to
yeah,
14th.
yeah,
That's what I see. But I see like you, I see Bournemouth go down. I see Fulham go down. I see Everton go down.
yeah. I certainly, I certainly see those teams struggling. A team that I think is going to struggle, and this one might be a little bit controversial. I don't know how you feel about this one, but I see Wolves really struggling this year. I, you know, they were very fortunate last season. They scored nowhere near enough goals, you know, to finish where they. I mean, they finished in the top half of the table, didn't they? In the end.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, a lot of that was. I mean, it was almost entirely down to Jose Sarr, to be honest, and you know his save percentage.
From
If
what
if if Sarr can, maintain that sort of level of performance, then there'll be a solid mid-table side, no problem. But I feel like there'll be a little bit more of a regression in that sense.
I reckon there'll definitely be a regression. They won't be maybe. I think there definitely will be a mid-table team.
Mm.
I do agree with you that obviously the regression will be there. With Jose isn't going to keep that kind of performance. We saw it with Martinez for Aston Villa the season before.
Yeah,
It's almost kind of going to be the same situation, I would think, with the Wolves, because they haven't really done any major signings. They got Neto back, which is always a huge plus,
yeah.
I think.
Neto might, the classic feel like a new signing,
Yeah,
player out for a long-term injury. You know, I don't see a player that can carry a team or be that focal point in Neto. I think he's a very nice player.
yeah,
Like watching him, but Jimenez doesn't seem the same striker he was a couple of years ago before
injury.
the skull fracture. Huang had moments last season, but wasn't consistently. I mean, no one was consistently scoring goals. It was a big problem. So there is a lot. It feels like there's a lot riding on Neto coming back into the side. To be honest,
Yeah, yeah, I can agree with that. I don't think they'll be near the bottom half. I wouldn't say that. For me, they're
mm.
like a mid-table team. For the teams I think that'll be near the bottom half, I would say I am slightly worried about Leeds. I did like
I
what
was
Marsh.
very worried about Leeds. I was very worried about Leeds, but I'm actually quite impressed with some of the signings they've made. I'll be honest. Tyler Adams
Yep,
is a very nice signing. Is it Sinistera,
yep,
the winger from Feyenoord? He's a top talent. If these guys come in, I know they've lost Calvin Phillips. That is massive.
and
That is a massive blow.
Rafinha as well.
Rafinha as well. So
Bamford's in that side.
Calvin Phillips feels the most important because
He
you
was
know,
everything to that system.
yeah, they're night and day when he's in the team versus out of the team in terms of results they pick up. Um, I think they've signed a midfielder as well, Mark Rocker. He was highly rated. Hasn't quite happened for him yet in his
Mm.
career, but it might now. They're exciting signings, and if nothing else, we're going to get that Leeds that we sort of got used to since they came up in the Premier League. I think they're going to be quite an exciting team to watch going forwards. Probably still a little bit suspect defensively, which does concern me. But Yeah, to be honest with Leeds, I could see them finishing as high as like 13th, 14th, but could also see them finishing anywhere lower than that. I could even see them being dragged into a relegation battle again, to be honest, if these signings don't click.
Yeah,
You know,
that's where I see them to be at. I see them near the relegation battle. I
mm,
think the issues I have with their squad, even though they are exciting squads, I think a few injuries, which will happen
mm.
eventually, especially with their play style, it's going to just crumble them. And I think their lack of goals, like Dan James, not a prolific goal scorer. Bamford, he's gone off the rails completely. I don't know if he'll ever come back. And
Scored a
then
lovely goal recently in pre-season.
Harrison's
Yeah,
a streaky player. So
yeah, streaky, very streaky. Dan James is a bit streaky as well. Um, yeah, it feels like they need Bamford to be fit for a season, and I if he does stay fit for the season, he should be worth 10 to 15 goals.
yeah, if they get the goals, I'll be a bit more inclined. I think with their kind of play style, the high pressing on the front foot play style, you need a goal scorer because they're
Yeah,
not going to revert to the five at the back or like shell up. They won't be able to do that. They don't have the
no,
defenders for it. So yeah, it'll be up to Bamford for their season, kind of.
yeah, it does feel that way. So yeah, they feel like a team that could finish anywhere in that
Yeah,
sort of bottom half. I certainly don't see them pushing for top half of the table. Um, One team that I'm a little concerned about is Southampton.
yeah, I can see that.
They, I don't know, they seem to have got weaker from last season on the surface. They had a decent side last season, but they have that horrible inconsistency about them, and it's I don't think I've ever seen a team that is so capable of fluctuations from week to week. A team that can go to Spurs and win at Spurs, and this is when Conte was just getting into gear
Yeah,
at Spurs. That was no mean feat what they'd done, and they drew with City. Um, they beat Arsenal. But yet you just feel that like a 9-0 is round the corner with them
every season.
at every turn, and it's so weird that that happens quite so regularly for them. I don't know how to explain that because I like Ralph Hasenhüttl. I think
Yeah,
he's
I think he's
good.
doing great work there.
I think he's great tactically. I think you know mentally, the players seem on the same page. They don't seem to be this like mentally weak team.
Yeah, even after they got beat 9-0 those few times, they
Yeah,
they
they always
bounced back.
responded well. It's very concerning why it happens in the first place. And yeah, they do feel like a team that's got weaker though over the summer. Um, and they haven't really signed anyone of major note.
No, and I think like you said, every season they seem to be getting weaker and weaker. It's almost like how much time has Ralph got? Because if he's not getting backing, he's doing like major works with his kind of play style where the top sides find it difficult, the mid tables can kind of compete, and low table it's just 50-50 really.
It feels like once you get past that sort of top six and even top eight sort of region,
Yep.
if you're not constantly strengthening that team, you're gonna get found out, and you're just gonna slide down the table. You can't just keep just go again and expect it just to be work out well. It feels like you've always got to be adapting, do something different, take some of these bigger teams, better teams, richer teams by surprise.
Yep, true. And you got to be signing from even the championship. That's what Crystal Palace have done so
Very well.
well since after
Yeah.
Hodgson left. They've brought the young talents through, and they reaped the rewards last season. They should be even higher.
Yeah, and Southampton did sort of drop off at the back end of last season. Um, and I see them finishing around sort of 15th.
Yeah, I can see that.
I will say I'd still be surprised if they got dragged into a relegation battle. I think there's far worse teams in the division and teams that feel more liable to be, struggling in the lower depths of the table. But yeah, I do worry about them.
Yeah, I agree. They every season they're gonna go down little by little, but they're not bad enough to get relegated. So they'll never be at that kind of relegation battle at the
Yeah,
moment.
I'd hope so because they are a well-run club. Since they came back into the Premier League, they've been very good in the transfer market. They
Yeah,
they find great value there and they sell on, and it's very difficult to do that year after year. And I think Southampton have found that you will have these sort of off periods, couple of years where you just sort of need to rebuild again.
yeah.
But they've managed to stay in the Premier League. They've never really been involved in a relegation battle the last sort of 6 or 7 years.
No, and I
So
think
on the face of it, for a club that very nearly went completely out of business at one point, they went into administration. I think they'd be very happy with where they are in general.
yep. I guess the fans, maybe would want a little bit more backing. I guess maybe if they can hold out for a couple more seasons, maybe make a few big sales, they can go back into it.
Yeah, yeah. It feels like they need another one of those sort of transfer keys that they got, from all the Lalanas and Schneiderlin and
Yeah,
Wanyamas of back in the day. Um, so let's head more up the table and talk about teams that we think might push the top six. Might push for European places next season.
yeah. For me, I think West Ham. They got Skamaka. I think he's going to be a great signing. I think if they get Kostic as well, that they're rumored to get. I think they're just building on the strengths that they have from last season. I think they're gonna have a really well-run team. I wouldn't even be surprised if they've gotten top six if one of the top six was faltering. I think they're ready to
Mhm.
swoop in. I don't think they have the star players to just get in there quite yet. But I think they're kind of the team that's hovering, waiting for one of them to slip up.
Yeah, they do feel like a good team in general. For me, I think they'll just slightly drop off from where they've been the last couple of years. I still think they'll be a top half team,
Yep.
but I personally think Skamaka might be another one of those sort of expensive flops.
You think like Horler and stuff. Hala.
Yeah, Halle. Yeah, it does feel like the same sort of signing, and it so often happens with these teams outside the top six. They drop 40 million on the striker, and there's a reason that these strikers were allowed to go to lower teams in the lower reaches of the Premier League. Say like Joe Linton for Newcastle. I know they've sort of adapted him brilliantly, but yeah, he's not been clinical. He wasn't
Yeah.
clinical in Italy, and to be fair, it is quite difficult to be clinical in Italy.
I think what he brings is the hold-up play. Like he just like
He's a
Antonio,
presence.
his
He is a
presence,
presence.
and he's got a good long-range shot. So
Yeah, I saw one of his strikes in a clip.
yeah, I
Um,
think get the wide players, they can build that kind of system where he drops off.
yeah,
Bowen will be the main goal
and
scorer.
to be fair, they've operated without a 20 goal a season striker for 3 or 4 years. They don't need him to be that.
Yeah,
They probably, they obviously want an upgrade at striker. Antonio wasn't quite consistent enough, but they get goals from Bowen,
yep,
and they've got a lovely. I love the Lanzini, Fornals, Benrahma. Just feels like they've always got a player who's one of them's always in form,
yeah,
playing well. It's great to just be able to rotate between these guys. There's top teams that don't have that sort of interchangeability in attacking areas.
yeah.
I'm
That's
surprised
true.
they've kept hold of some of these guys for so long. But it does feel like it might be a sort of make or break year for West Ham in that sense, where if they don't finish, even if they might be looking at top four in as a club.
Yep,
You'd certainly be saying, well, outside of Liverpool and City, no one's nailed on.
yeah,
We expect Spurs to be better. We expect Arsenal to be better. Chelsea and United, maybe question marks, but hey, we're a good team. We're a
yeah.
good side. We've held on to all our top players from last year. We've added Skamaka and Aguerd. Agad
Yeah, good. Yeah,
at centre back. Him and Zuma. I mean, if that's turns out to be even a good signing, they got a fantastic central defensive pairing.
they got a strong core in the middle, right? They got Declan Rice,
Yeah,
striker
Declan Rice,
Bowen.
Thomas Souček had a little quieter season last season, but I do love him and Rice together. It's a real presence in the centre of midfield,
Yeah,
which we've spoken a lot about today in terms of how important that is.
yeah, they got right combination, and Moyes has done well in terms of keeping his players as well. Like most of these clubs get into this position and they sell. I look
Well,
what
that's what I think is going to be the thing with West Ham. If they don't break into that, elite,
mm,
you
they'll have
know,
to sell soon.
it definitely, like, let's say they miss Europa League, then I thought Declan Rice would be gone this summer. I'm surprised he's still there, but it's great news for West Ham. I think he's club captain now.
Yep.
But him, Zuma, some of these core players that we look at might be looking elsewhere. Bowen.
Yep, very true. Quality players who kind of broke through. So
Yeah. A team that I feel better about, I feel really good about, is Newcastle. I've got them finishing like seventh
yeah,
and could easily break into that top six if, like we said about, some of these teams we're not so sure about in the top six. The way they ended last season, I mean, I think from January to May, they were like a top four side in terms of points accrued, points per game in that time.
yep. One of the best
They
defensive records too, right? Second or
great defensive record, and Botman should only improve them in that sense.
and Nick Pope,
And Nick Pope,
Trippier back.
Trippier back.
That is a whole back four. They're gonna pretty much a whole
It
defensive
is,
unit.
even Matt Target is just a solid, reliable Premier League fullback.
Yep.
Bruno Guimaraes was fantastic at the back end of last season. They feel like a nicely balanced team, and everyone can criticize where that money's coming from, but they're doing it the right way in terms of how to become a real top club.
Yep.
They're not just throwing money at anyone and anyone and everyone. They seem to really be targeting players. They're going to take their time. They know this is a 2-3 year process. Just embrace it. But there's definitely a feel good factor around the club again, which was missing for the last 15 years under Mike Ashley.
Yeah, Newcastle fans definitely deserve it. They've been such a big fan base, big club. They should have been higher all these years. I'm glad they do have that now. That kind of project to
Yeah,
look forward to.
they are probably the great underachiever.
Yeah,
You know, yeah, we all think of Tottenham as being that big club that doesn't win trophies. I mean, they do win trophies. They might not win, like some of the other teams in the top six, but Newcastle really don't win trophies.
yeah, that's true.
And I do think in the next few years that's probably going to change.
Yeah, I
It is
definitely.
a lot harder. It's a lot harder to break into the elite now than it was, say, for City, say, for Chelsea 15, 20 years ago, but they're doing it the right way.
Yeah, they'll definitely mix in the big boys soon enough. For my thinking about Newcastle this season, yeah, they had a great kind of like January to the end of season. I think they will regress a little bit,
I think
even
they've
though
been found out a bit.
yeah, I think even though they're great defensive signings, the midfield I don't think has been bolstered enough around Bruno Guimaraes. I also think
Yeah.
the front three, as much as I like Saint Maximan, as much as I like Wilson, I think they needed like some kind of focal point. Sometimes these like kind of redeveloping clubs, they always have that kind of signing that kind of inspires everyone,
Yeah.
and they
I
did.
think I think Bruno's been that guy for them, Bruno Guimaraes. But I agree with you, and I something I noticed at the back end of last season was Sam Maximan, who had so often been that sort of,
The guy for them, yeah.
yeah, he was the guy. He seemed to be the guy that in all these couple of years where they were just playing honestly quite dreadful football under Steve Bruce, he was the magic. He was the magic. Now they've actually got a really good team, and some of the games you could see the fans getting frustrated with San Maximan.
Yep.
He was often like trying too much, and that's fine for a team that can't do, diddly squat otherwise. But for a side that is playing very, very well, you actually just want someone that is functional and does, what your left winger's traditionally supposed to do. You don't want him dribbling past 8 players to the opposing corner flag. Like, just, get the ball in the box, let Callum Wilson get on the end of it.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of big clubs didn't go for him because he
Yeah,
did shine for Newcastle, but he's shown because they were
he
terrible.
he feels like, you know, what Delafeu was at Watford.
For
You
Ben
know,
Arthur, yeah,
just this like big fish in a small pond. That is perfect for him.
yeah,
And I think Newcastle should maybe look to cash in on him.
yeah. I would agree with that. They need the money. They can use the money across the front
Well,
three.
they don't need the money.
Oh yeah, that's true.
They maybe in the sense to balance the
The
books
balance sheet.
FFP wise, but yeah, they definitely don't need money.
But yeah,
But
that's why I put them as a sort of kind of a high mid-table finish. I don't think they'll be like near West Ham. They might be like
okay.
they might be like two places drop down for them. But yeah, good
Well,
season for them.
I've got Newcastle seventh. I've got West Ham ninth, and in a sandwiched between them, I've got my my beloved Crystal Palace. I've loved them since last season.
Yeah,
They you briefly mentioned some of the signings they've made. They've signed really well in the transfer market. I know they've lost Conor Gallagher,
yeah,
which is a big blow. But to be honest, his impact seemed to dwindle as the season went on last season.
yeah. I can see where you say that. Like, he was that kind of fresh air kind of signing at the start, but then he also just provide the work rate, and I think they can get that from other players in that squad.
Yeah, they'll definitely get it because they seem to buy into Vieira's style of play.
Yeah,
He's really got them moving in the right direction very, very quickly. He's done a really good job there. But yeah, again, they feel like a really well balanced side. Last season, and defensively, their expected goals against was very, very competitive.
hmm
Was in the top 8 of the Premier League for much of the season. They conceded like at a sort of unexpected rate compared to that, conceded more goals. And they probably need to score more goals consistently.
yeah. I agree with that.
And part of the problem is, Mateta started a lot of games at the back end of last season, but he doesn't feel like a natural goal scorer in the sense that Eduard is.
No,
And but for some reason, Eduard doesn't really seem to be, fancy to start. If they've got 10 games, he'll start about 4 or 5 of them.
yeah. Maybe it could be like a betting in season for them. Obviously, it was a huge 180 shift last season.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
start to play. Yeah,
I agree with you that they're going to do quite well this season. I put them actually. It'll be West Ham kind of in the island, and then them and Crystal Palace interchange wherever that position will be.
yeah.
But yeah, they'll have Eze back. They probably have Elise. Hopefully, if he gets more game
Elise,
time.
Elise is absolutely fantastic. That
Yeah,
guy is a talent. Um, and to be honest, I think he's just gonna explode at the sense that he might not be at Palace
yeah.
come next August.
But
I
yeah,
think that's how good he is.
Zaha, Eze, Elise. If Edouard can name that state, that's a frightening front four.
It's so good, and the thing that I think Zaha's really gonna thrive now.
Yeah,
They for a couple of years it felt like he was sort of going off the boil a little bit, not quite the impact player he was for Palace because it felt like the burden was entirely on him.
bit like
Um,
ASM for Newcastle.
yeah, but it did. Towards the end of Hodgson's spell, it felt like Zaha was basically their attacking threat,
Yeah, you mark Zaha
and,
out,
and that was
pretty
it. Yeah,
much.
and you got a good chance of winning the game. But it feels like that weight is lifted on off his shoulders,
Yeah,
and as a result, he's so much more dangerous
yeah.
because you can't afford to key in on Zaha.
No.
You just can't. They've got too many good attacking players. They've got great options. I spoke about, West Ham with those sort of interchangeable um,
Front
attacking
four,
players. I know Eze's been playing a lot in central midfield, but he feels like more of an attacking
attacking
player.
mid.
He can certainly play in that front three if you want him to. And yeah, they've got great options. They can interchange. They can hit you a lot of different ways. And the thing that I really like at Palace is the back four, specifically the centre backs.
Yeah, Gay and
And Anderson and Gay were superb last season, and I hope they keep hold of Gay this season.
I think they will.
There's been rumours. I doubt any team's going to come in now and drop the 60 million that it's going to take. Because that's what it's going to take.
Yeah,
I'll be looking at Ben White going for 50 million last season. I'll be thinking
I could get
this guy might
10 million.
be, better than Ben White. I think he is better than Ben White. I think he's a proper talent.
And they also have Chip the Cure. Like the stats on him are insane for defensive midfielder. Like there's been a lot of articles wrote for Man United to get this kind of player. Now he's gone to Crystal Palace.
I'll check the core.
Chip
Yeah, yeah.
Doucouré.
I saw that signing. Yeah, and I
They
think
needed that as well because
yeah, I think the defensive midfield. I think Kouyaté spent a lot of time there
yep.
last season, and he done pretty well for them. But it does feel like a position that Vieira would feel very strongly about. It might get to the point where he just selects himself. I think he's still got it.
Yeah.
He
So maybe.
certainly still got it with the referees.
Oh
He
yeah.
uh,
He's
he
always
didn't
bickering.
mind. For like 3 or 4 times last season, he was having arguments with the ref at the end of a game. You don't lose it. But yeah, I feel really good about Palace, and we're sort of left with these
Mid T.
teams in the middle now. Then you've got Villa, Brighton, Leicester, Brentford, um, and they're mid-table for the simple reason I could see it going either way with all of those teams. Even lowly Brentford, I could see them having another great season. Certainly the way they ended last season. I know they've lost Ericsson. I was kind of disappointed in that
Yeah.
because he was so good for them. He seems to perfectly suit that side. But they could go on a run and finish in the top half of the table. I definitely believe that. Villa under Gerrard's, it didn't really take off last season. You saw it at times. They weren't able to consistently sort of get results.
I think with Gerrard, he doesn't have a starting 11, like a set starting 11.
Yeah,
It's so interchangeable. But hopefully, with Leon Bailey coming in pre-season, the hot form he is, they've got Buendia, Coutinho. They do have a lot of great options.
they have, and too many of those guys. Bailey and Buendia, especially, really were quite disappointing last season.
Yep.
Really didn't scale the heights that they were expected to, and we know who Philip Coutinho is at this point. I don't think we need to spend half an hour discussing him.
Who's that?
He's a great player on his day, but he doesn't have enough of those days.
I think Coutinho simplifies Aston Villa. Like that's Aston Villa. I like that. They're great on some
Yeah,
days,
yeah,
and they're so inconsistent.
yeah,
And I think
brilliant. And
they'll go mid-table for sure. Like 10th,
yeah,
I would say 10th for now.
they've brought in Diego Carlos, and he might be a replacement for Mings. Mings might not even be starting 11 now, which is aggressive from Villa
Yeah,
because Mings does take a lot of flack, but I think he's a good defender.
yeah.
He has his moments, but I think there's a really good defender there.
He's a Premier League quality defender, I think
Yeah,
for sure. But I've seen a few clips of Diego Carlos. He's very like Mings. He's very rash. I was like, do they want the same kind of player? I thought they would choose something different. I was a bit surprised by that.
yeah. He's South American, isn't he?
Yeah,
South American rash defenders.
Marcos Rojo.
But yeah, but Villa, I can see it going both ways for them.
Then
Brighton, I would have placed Brighton higher.
you kind of
If
want to place them
I
high.
want to because I know
As
how
they play.
good a job Graham Potter's doing there. I don't know how long they can sustain losing top players year after year. It's the Southampton thing.
Yep.
It's the Southampton problem. The good thing, the thing that I like about them as a club is that they're not just overspending for the sake of it. It's not like, right, we've got 25 million for Basuma, let's go and splash it on some, guy that, we watched in a YouTube compilation or something. Like, and I think Graham Potter, so far in his Brighton career, has been able to elevate players.
Yep.
Doesn't feel like he needs a great signing to get a good team there. But I do think Basuma's going to be a massive loss.
Yeah, I agree with that. And if they lose Cucurella
And
as well,
potentially Cucurella.
those are two major parts of the system
Two
they
major
play.
parts. Yeah, they are good defensively, but their problem since they came into the Premier League has been scoring goals, and they haven't really addressed that in the summer either. So
Yeah, they signed Under from the Belgium league, but it's whether it remains seen if he can do that job. Because
yeah,
Mopé is an okay striker; he'll score a few goals, but they need like a prolific kind of poacher in the box. I also thought like Nketiah would be a good signing for them.
yeah, but hands off. And Leicester,
Yeah, for me, Leicester, this is gonna be.
tough.
I put them like 14th. I would say they're gonna be.
I mean, that feels low. I put them 12, so it's not that much lower than me, to be honest. But I agree. I mean, I think when I first put this sort of rough table together,
Yeah.
I went. This was before I sort of really looked at signings. I was just sort of going off. Okay, I like Leicester. They've got great players. They've been consistent. Last season aside, they've been consistently good under Brendan Rodgers. His style of football, I like his style of play, but they're losing a lot of players this summer.
Yeah.
Michael
There's rumored to be more,
Tielemans.
right?
Tielemans is expected to go. Newcastle are going really hard at Maddison.
Yeah.
Chelsea are going at Fofana potentially. And Jamie Vardy's what
4?
3,800. I don't know. Like he's not going to be around for much longer.
No, and Schmeichel's gone to Nice.
Yeah, Schmeichel, and he's a leader in that dressing room as well. That's a big problem, and I don't think it doesn't feel like Leicester have the money to spend this summer.
No, it seems like
to be
they're
able to
trying to forget
replace.
they've forgotten about the project really.
No, I think from what I understand, they did have a big high wage bill comparative to teams around them. It was quite comparable to some of the top 6 sides. So they did have to offload. I didn't think they needed to offload as many as they did, but I think it's more of a sense that once 1 or 2 players start jumping ship, the other top players that could play elsewhere start thinking, well, hang on a second, do I want to be at Leicester or do I want to be, playing European football right now and things like that. And I wasn't overly enamoured by Leicester's style of play last year.
No, they seemed a bit lost last season.
Yeah,
Injuries could have played a huge part.
They did play some part, but the formation just really didn't seem to suit them. It felt like Tielemans wasn't being utilised properly. It felt like Maddison wasn't always being utilised properly, even though he was still fairly productive. Harvey Barnes, I like him because I think there's a player there, but he's starting to have that sort of Damari Gray about him, where he just threatens to break out and then just goes a bit cold for a while.
Yeah, he's a more streaky version of Demar Gray.
Yeah.
At least he does that.
I think Damari Gray was the streakier, but I mean Damari Gray at Everton, yeah, I'd agree with that. I don't feel confident about Leicester this year, and how long does Brendan Rodgers want to stay? This it feels like this project, or certainly this era, post title win, is sort of coming to an end. They're going to have to rebuild. It feels. Does Rodgers want to be a part of that? Because I feel like he could go elsewhere. But then, are there top teams looking? Will there be top teams looking?
Yeah.
If Tuchel leaves Chelsea, potentially, but they tend not to look in the Premier League. They
Yeah.
tend to go elsewhere.
Yeah, the only place I could see, if he stays this one more season, and we'll see if Conte does want to stick around. He's normally a quite short-term manager. It's the only top English club I could see him go to next. But yeah, I agree with you. This is probably Rodgers' last season. The City are probably in sell mode at the moment. They're probably,
Yeah,
as long as they get mid-table and they can hope to rebuild next season, they'll probably do.
yeah.
It's
I
time for
mean,
scouting, really.
it's just we keep talking about it. It's very hard for these mid-table sides that break into European football to maintain it because they they find it harder to keep hold of players because players want to play for the big name clubs. It's a prestige thing as much as anything, and there's only so many summers that you can just lose great players.
And then replace them as
Not
well.
every signing you're going to make is going to be a home run.
True.
It's just no way, and luck plays a part as well. So yeah, it feels like it's going to be a little bit of a down season for Leicester. You know, hopefully, it's not going to fall completely apart because I think most people, love Leicester and love what they've done over the
Of
past few
course. How
years.
could you not?
Yeah, that was great.
You got a soft spot with them. I
But
guess
yeah,
we've done the full 20.
yeah, that's basically our table, and we've largely agreed.
Yeah, just
We
one or
seem to
two really.
think the same teams will struggle. I think the biggest discrepancy was Wolves,
Yeah, yeah.
really.
You seeing
So I
Wolves?
really think they're going to struggle. I don't know why. I really, they need to find goals.
Yeah. So I guess we go on to the player accolades. I guess let's
Yes.
start off with player of the year. Who do you think? Or who do you think maybe a few and then pick your number one?
For me, I mean, it's all you're always going to be talking about the same names. It's largely going to be the same names from last season. I think
Yeah.
any new names, I think Haaland's going to be in in with a shout.
Hmm.
I think Gabriel Jesus at Arsenal might be in with a shout
Okay.
if we're talking new players. But I'd say Haaland because I also think, spoiler alert, that he's going to be top scorer as well.
Ah.
And if he does get the Golden Boot, I see him getting Player of the Year as well. Um, it's always harder, I guess, to assess a Manchester City signing in isolation
Yeah.
because you expect them to be a good team, even if they didn't sign this, player X. But I think he's really going to. I think it's more going to be what he's going to do in Europe is going to play on people's minds.
I see what you mean with the
I'm thinking
votes.
about things like this. Yeah,
For me, it was between two. It's between Kane or Salah, but I think I might go with Kane this year. I think he'll be within like the top two or top three for goals, and I also think he'll maybe like even try and nearly break the assist record. I think.
yeah. I've got him as top assister.
Yeah,
I
same.
don't know why. He feels like more influential in that regard now.
Hmm.
We almost take it for granted that he's probably going to get around 15 to 20 goals, maybe more,
Yeah,
because he is still an out and out goal scorer. But that other side of his game, where he's able to just drop into midfield, he drifts all over the place, and he just causes so many problems for centre backs. Do you go with him? Do you stay? Do you let him pick up, the space and be able to turn with it? He's a nightmare. He's an absolute nightmare, and his passing range is outrageous.
yeah,
It's
it
very
really
rare
is.
you see a number nine even really care about things like that. Quite frankly, they're usually just smashing the ball into the net in their back garden. That's about it.
Yep.
He's just a proper all round footballer. Very smart, very intelligent.
Yeah, he's one of the best that's come across the game. But
Yeah,
yeah, I would say Kane this year because I do think Spurs are gonna have a really breakthrough season. They're gonna be capturing a lot of attention.
yeah.
Obviously, not as much as Liverpool or City, but yeah, like you, I put him as a top assister. I think with the players that he is around with now, like Son was obviously the main outlet for his creativity. But I think Kulusevski's come in, he can score some goals. Richarlison also likes to go
It
beyond the
feels
last
like
minute.
he's got more options. And Perez is just going to get goals.
Yeah,
I have no doubt about that.
and Paris can cross to Kane as well. Like so,
Yeah,
he's gonna
they
be
got options.
he's gonna be high goal scorer, high assister. Will he
Yeah,
break Henri's record? I don't know. He's got the potential to do it, and he's got the squad around him to do it now. With that kind of defensive, with Romero, Basuma, Hojberg,
yeah.
Benuka. He's
They've
got
they've got a great defensive base where they can basically go out and just absolutely annihilate teams with their attack if they want. They did it at the back end of last season in a few games. Just they they tore apart a Newcastle side that was banging form. They just put five past them. I mean, it's stupid what they can do on their day.
yeah, and I think they'll have more of those days. So that's why
Yeah.
Kane's my player of the year. So I guess next one is young player of the year. I think we might have the same player.
Go
Saka for me.
I did have Saka, but I changed it to Saliba because I think he's going to be a more important player for
Ooh.
Arsenal. I see him and Gabriel. I've said it a couple of times. I think they're the partnership going forward
Hmm.
in the long term. Might not be, once Tomiyasu's back in the side, it might still be White and Gabriel early. But I just think, from what I've seen of Saliba, he is what you want in a centre back. He's got all the athleticism and size and presence that you want in the centre back. But the thing that's really impressed me is all his defending happens in front of him.
Hmm.
It never feels like he's chasing. He's got that Van Dijk about him where he always seems in control of the situation. He's not stretching. He's never last gasp challenging. It's just all very measured and controlled.
Yeah, I would say that with Ben White. Sometimes you feel like it's a last ditch tackle too many
Yeah,
times for your liking, a bit rash. But yeah,
yeah, and he'd get dominated in the air quite a lot. Gabriel could be drawn into silly little
fouls.
battles as well at times. It could, and I hope maybe with Saliba next to him, it might get more out of Gabriel as well. Because
Yeah.
there's a top defender there. I'm nitpicking with Gabriel. He's been fantastic since he came in as well. But I think Arsenal were a good defense last season. I think the signing of Saliba, even if it maybe doesn't happen this season, I think he has the potential to take it from a good defense to a great defense.
Yeah, I can 100% agree with you. Like for me, it was between three players. It was Saliba. The other one is Fofana. If he moves to Chelsea, I could see him quite do well, but it's a bit iffy if he does move. For me, I think Saka the last few years. I think you obviously agree as an Arsenal fan. He's been the linchpin of the team, the star man. Everyone probably in every team loves him, and this is probably I think if he gets a bit more rest in a few games, I think with Jesus offering more runs, more space in more space to operate, I think he's gonna have even more purpose to this game, more ability
Yeah,
to get into the
it could
throat.
it can go both ways. I personally see it as I feel like some of the burden is being lifted off Saka with that Jesus signing because Lacazette didn't get anywhere near enough goals in
Yeah.
the number 9 position, and you know Smith Rowe scored quite a few more than you sort of would expect it from him,
Hmm.
and Saka's year on year managed to improve that in his game, but it felt like it had to be one of them, or we weren't really going to get the goals. I think we're going to get far more goals from Gabriel Jesus. I think Martinelli is going to take, another step this season.
Yep.
Um, but I love Saka. He's such, we talked about Kane being an intelligent footballer. Look at what Saka's doing. He's still only 20.
Yeah.
That's
It's ridiculous how much he's progressed in such little time and
yeah.
taking that burden. Even after the World Cup miss, he's taking it in
He
stride really.
he's an incredibly mature player there. I hope we protect him.
Yeah.
Protect him at all costs. Um, s- um, what were you thinking top goal scorer wise? I know you mentioned Kane should be there or thereabouts. Is there anyone else on your mind in that regard?
Yep. So it was between two. So I think Kane will be second. I think Haaland will probably dominate goals per 90. I just don't think he's gonna have. I could be wrong. It could be. But I don't think he's gonna have that many 90
Yeah,
minutes.
you're very sure that he's gonna miss quite a lot of Premier League time.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. Maybe I don't know why. I just feel like there's an injury with him, or there's. I think Pep's gonna manage his minutes more so than the other players on his list. I think obviously Salah and Nunes, I think will play a lot of minutes. I think they'll be one of those two. But if I had to put my hat on it, it'd probably still be Salah. I think.
Yeah, I think you bank on Salah right now. Nunes is still something of an unknown.
Yeah.
Um, though the number of shots he's averaging, you know, you know, um, per 90 minutes in pre-season is pretty outrageous, Nunes. So
Yeah.
don't be surprised if he explodes. But yeah, I've got Haaland, but it's all the usual suspects, really,
Mm.
with the top goal scorer. Signing of the season, tough to really sort of compare across the
Yeah.
entire league. But I've kept it at home. I've gone Gabriel Jesus. It felt like the obvious signing. We knew we were going to get a striker this summer, and he's come in. It's everything with Jesus. It's not just the goal scoring ability, the directness, the combinations, the willingness to just run into every channel.
Yeah.
He seems to have just brought this energy to the club as a whole. The team really seems to be responding to him as a person, and I think his impact is going to be measured in more than just goals, and I think he's going to score a few goals.
Yeah, I can completely agree with that. Like, for me, the only reason I don't put him like signing a season, I think obviously he's a lot better player than Lacazette. I just don't think he's top. Like, obviously he's not the
Yeah,
same caliber as elite players. But yeah, I do agree. Like, in terms of signings that Arsenal needed from last season, that's a big void that they've now filled in.
yeah, and it felt like the thing that really ultimately prevented them from finishing in the top four. It's just they couldn't. They still struggled to score goals consistently.
Yeah.
For a team that improved a lot defensively last season, it felt like the goal scoring that really let them down, certainly towards the back end of the season.
Mhm. For me, I've gone very offhand pick. I've actually gone for the other City signing. I've gone for Alvarez.
Yeah, go on. I'm interested. Yeah,
I think he'll actually play a lot of minutes this season, and I think it's a very left-hand field. But I think with the signings that the sells of Sterling and Jesus, they've lacked who's gonna run in from the wide areas. They have Mahrez and Grealish that come in, likes the ball to feet and they dribble. But I think Alvarez will actually like contribute quite a lot. I think he'll play a
more
lot
of
of
an inside forwards rather than
yeah
an inverted winger.
yeah, and I think he'll actually because he can play left or right or even down the center. I think he'll just come in maybe 30, 40 minutes or even start the first 60 minutes. And I think he seems like a handful. I think because he's just constantly running in behind
Yeah.
and the way City play, especially if Haaland's on the same
Well,
pitch.
I think they were saying his profile is essentially Gabriel Jesus in terms of his sort of energy, the sort of buzzing around striker that he was
Yeah,
as well. Um, yeah, I see where you're coming from. I think if we're talking signing of the season, I think I'm looking at impact.
hmm
I'm thinking, is he going to make City, undeniable contenders? I don't think so. There's other signings there for me, but he does feel like a quiet one
yeah. I,
because
I went for more of the because obviously, how do you make City better? They've already got a top quality squad like Haaland and stuff like that. I'm going for deciding that probably has, in terms of value for money, I think they've picked up a huge bargain for the season. I think the quality will shine. I think
yeah,
even maybe like he could perform just as well as Haaland, and then in those people's eyes, they could see, oh, okay, that's a real player, that's a real gem that Pep has picked up.
yeah. If we're talking outside the top six, I'm looking at a couple of centre backs. It feels like since Van Dijk at Liverpool, it
hmm
feels like everyone has sort of keyed into the importance of that big, the centre back signing, the centre back that comes in and just improves your defence
Yeah.
immeasurably. So I'm looking at Newcastle and West Ham, Botman and Agued.
hmm
Mentioned them both earlier. These could be, defenders that that make these defenses, really top defenses in the league,
Yep.
and potentially propel those two into major European places.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I don't know much about the West Ham guy. I know Botman. He did really well at Lille, I think. So I can see in terms of the physicality. I don't think he has a problem. He's a huge lad.
Yeah,
Yeah, if he can get good to the Premier League, yeah, I could definitely see him being a success.
always tough in a quicker sort of Premier League to really project these guys. And I've gone in terms of worst signing, and
Yep.
to be honest, he could quite easily end up being the best signing of the season. I don't like predicting the worst signing of the season because we don't know anything. It's all guesswork, and
Yep.
I'd rather be guessing positive about players than negative. But
Yep.
Scamacca for West Ham, it feels like it's either going to be a brilliant signing or a disaster of a signing. I think when you spend big on a striker, it can only ever really be one of those two things.
Mhm.
It's I know Newcastle have made Joe Linton work as a centre midfielder, but for a long time he was a flop. It was for a side that really didn't have a lot of money to throw around at that time. It was a poor use of 40 million.
Yep.
West Ham had a similar one with Allaire, who's he's flying at Ajax now,
Yep.
it seems. So, but yeah, I feel like that was Scamacca. He could quite easily be the best signing of the season. Scored the goals that take West Ham into serious contention, or it's just going to be another one of these big money strikers that just doesn't adapt to the Premier League.
Yeah, I could definitely on the same par with you. Like for me, he was nearly signing of season for me. It was Alvarez, Scamacca, or Nunes. Those are my top three, and I went for Alvarez for a little bit left hand pick. For me, flop of the season. Oh yeah, like you said, it is hard to say, but
Project, yeah,
for me, I'll probably say it's hard. I don't think he's gonna have like a god awful season, but I think Richarlison. I think with the minutes he'll have at Spurs, and I do like him as a player. For some reason, I've got this thinking around him that he's just not going to perform to the level we saw him at Everton.
they have. It's been a quite famous struggle for Spurs finding a striker that's just willing to sit on the bench for 40 games a season, and because no player really wants to do that.
Yep.
The best success they had was Llorente in that Champions League run
Yep.
where Kane was injured and he scored some, put in some important performances in that run. I like the Richarlison signing in the sense that he is versatile. He can play anywhere in that attacking area, and that should give him more minutes. Champions League football as well means he will play more often than some of the squad players late last season for Spurs.
Yep.
Um, but 50 million is quite a lot. He was the man at Everton. Will he, you know, will he shine in a bit part role at Spurs? There's a lot of pressure. If he comes in to the team because Kane is injured or because Son is injured, it's a lot of pressure. A lot
Yep.
of pressure to replicate that sort of,
Output.
out. So yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I'm also looking at a couple of the Everton signings. Dwight McNeil just. And I don't hate Dwight McNeil. It's just such an underwhelming signing to me. I don't know what you want with that.
Yeah.
Are you looking to be Burnley? Is that your ceiling for Everton next season?
Sounds like you're
And
talking straight to Lampard there.
like no disrespect to Burnley either, because they for a few years they really competed in the Premier League. It was sort of left field from what everyone else was doing. Feels like football from a bygone era, but it worked.
Yeah, they
But
did really well.
you know, Everton. I'm moaning about Everton again, but you think about where they were 2 years ago. At the start of the season, they just signed James Rodriguez
Carlo Ancelotti.
for like 2 months, he was on fire. He was brilliant, which most people expected him to be at the start of the season, and most people, to be honest, did expect that he would just fall away over the winter.
Yeah.
That's just the kind of player he's been, but they felt like a club that was really pushing to break into the top six.
Hmm.
And, now they're signing, players from relegated Burnley in anticipation, probably, that they're going to be in another relegation battle.
Yeah, I could definitely see that they signed two players from Burnley. They probably are just ready for like a reset when they go back to Championship. Maybe then the owners will pump more money. I mean, they're
Well,
not.
Everton.
Yeah,
Well,
because
it'd be a disaster. I mean, it would be a disaster if they went into Championship for a club that
that.
has
Yeah.
clung on. It almost happened to them. Nearly 20 years ago, or 25 years ago, I should say. God, time's flying, man. um, but they clung on. They've got a very, very passionate fan base. It would be a disaster, I think, if they went down. Um, but this is what happens. These teams that want to break into that elite, and this is why Newcastle, I respect what they're doing.
Hmm.
They're trying to do it properly. They're trying to do it properly. They're not just going to throw a load of money in one summer and risk it all.
Yeah.
Take your time, do it properly.
Even like Man City when they first started to have money and they splashed the cash,
They splashed
it
it.
didn't work at the start.
It was awful, and then same with Chelsea. Really, they signed a bunch of players. A few of them stuck. It was just throw shit at the wall and
Yeah.
see what sticks. And some of it did. Even for City, some of it did. But if you just take your time, identify what sort of club you want to be, it can work.
Yeah, 100% agree with that approach. We've seen it every season now. The teams that sort of slow progress, like a bit like Arsenal or Liverpool,
Yeah.
it works in your favour. You gotta have patience with your managers and patience with the system and philosophy of the team.
Yeah, and United fans I preach that to United fans. Just be patient. It is a process. No club is too big, I think, for that process now. It's the way the Premier League is now. You can't just sort it out in one summer anymore.
Yeah, it's too competitive.
Yeah. And then, so we obviously we've talked about our teams, in general. Team overachiever and team underachiever.
Hmm.
My overachievers are Palace. I think, we're projecting them to be a good team,
Yeah.
but I think they can surprise people with how good they were. Because I think people would be surprised at how good, their performances were in terms of, expected goals and
Yep.
the quality of the football they were playing. So I've got them as my overachievers, and obviously Wolves as my underachievers.
Yeah, for me, it was between two teams for the overachievers. Crystal Palace. The only reason I have not gone for them is I think their pre-season has been like a bit halved. I think some of the COVID rules, some of the players couldn't go, and
Yeah,
they have a incredible hard start to season.
all things considered, it was a messy pre-season
Mm.
for Palace. They had to leave a bunch of players at home for their US tour. Some of it was injuries, some of it was players not being vaccinated, which shouldn't affect them in general over the season. They're not in Europe,
Yep.
but it's probably affected their build up to the season.
Yeah, so I think it's gonna be a rough start, and I think it's gonna be hard for them to like sort of catch up. I do think they're still gonna do pretty well. So I've
Yeah,
gone with Nottingham Forest. I think they're gonna be the package, like Brentford and Sheffield, as mentioned earlier. I think the counter attacking, the back five, even the players they kind of signed, like Lingard, is great for a counter attacking team. It's great
yeah.
in transition. So if they can kind of get the ball rolling, and we saw in the FA Cup, they can hang it with the big boys. One-off results. It's always they got kind of that nice package around them. So they're my overachievers.
I would like that, because Nottingham Forest are one of those sort of feel good
Nostalgia teams,
teams
yeah.
in English football. They have that history. I mean, really, they were just a great team for that very short period
Yeah,
of time.
very good team. For me, it would for underachiever. It's probably uh, Chelsea. I think, like I said before, I think
Yeah,
the kind of Tuchel, the board, the signings. It feels like one of those signings we've seen with Chelsea before under previous regimes, or even like Spurs or United, where they don't get the signings they want, and it's just that
yeah.
bad feeling around that
There's
club.
too many. There's too many of those sort of flags that sort of come up. You know, when teams have a bad season, you can always go back to how things were in pre-season and sort of say, oh, okay, it wasn't quite right there, and it does feel like that with Chelsea. We're coming up with too many reasons why it could go wrong for them.
Hmm.
Obviously, you know, we both like Tuchel. I think most people agree that he's a top manager.
Yep.
Um, is he strong enough to overcome everything? In this club that feels like it's in transition. We'll see. We'll see. It doesn't feel like a good time to be in a club in transition with how competitive it is, but
Yeah, I feel like as a club they kind of swapped. They've kind of lost players and they've swapped them back in, but they also have an aging squad. But all the other teams around them have at least slightly upgrade. Arsenal have major upgrade. City, Liverpool done another upgrade. Man United with slight upgrade. It's just gonna be hard for them.
yeah, yeah. We'll see because they still do have top talent, and the guys that they've brought in are great players.
Yeah,
We're just really projecting it as a team wide sort of concerns that we have, and I still think the weakest areas of the pitch they haven't addressed. They still haven't got an out and out centre forward, and Tuchel might not want an out and out centre forward. But listen, any team wants a number 9 that will score 20 goals a season.
yeah.
You believe me, that's why they spent 90 million on Lukaku,
That's why
and it
Liverpool
didn't
and
work
City
out.
have gone for
Yeah,
Haaland, Nunes.
even these two great teams who did so much without classic number 9s have felt the need to go out and buy one. Tells you a lot.
Very true. Anyways, guys, that wraps up our predictions. We'll put a graphic up afterwards. Love to hear everyone else's thoughts in the comments. Even message us. We can probably collect all the results and maybe end of the season. Let's see who gets it right, who gets it wrong. Matt.
Yep, we'll we will see.
Anyway, guys, see ya.
Thanks, guys.